So the L-sit is a fundamental calisthenics skill. It's the first skill I've learned, and it's most commonly known as a core drill, but you're going to see throughout this exercise and all the key attributes and components that actually develop so much more. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to break down the movement into its fundamental attributes, and you're going to discover why this is a foundational calisthenics skill for you to master. So straight arm strength is something that you need to master in calisthenics. And in order to develop straight arm strength, you need to be able to get your arms into a position where they are obviously strongest. So I'm going to break down straight arm strength into two components. And the first one is going to be externally rotating the humerus, which is here in internal rotation, there in external rotation. So it's very important for you to drill that. What that's going to do is that's going to stimulate the Infraspinatus and Teres minor, two muscles of the rotator cuff. And it's also going to start to stimulate the traps as well, which are going to bring your scapula into depression. But the main thing that we want to look at is just that external rotation. And so the first drill that you should do for that is simply placing your hands on the floor like so, fingers pointing forwards, just good practice for when we start to do things like handstands. And then from here, I'm going to ensure that my shoulders are over my hands, and then here my elbow pits are in internal rotation, and so I'm just going to externally rotate them. And as you do that, obviously you're going to feel the muscles of the rotator cuff contract slightly, and you're also going to feel a slight contraction of your traps because your shoulder blades are going to be starting to move downwards. So the first skill to master is just these elbow pit rotations. And so to drill this, simply just perform, let's say 5 to 10 reps of going from internal to external rotation like so. And as you're doing so, try and feel what the shoulder blades are doing. Now, once you've done that, you can actually transfer that to parallettes. We will be using parallettes for the L-sit, purely because this is going to help transfer to things like the planche, and also it's going to be much easier to go through the regressions rather than going off the floor. And so you can just simply, again, grab the parallettes like so. You can even come onto your feet for this one, just to ensure that you can get your shoulders directly over the hands. And then you're just going to rotate the elbow pits forwards, then back. So internal, external, internal, external. Again, 5 to 10 reps. This does not need to be something that's so disciplined and structured. It's just something for you to get used to feel those sensations. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is the next component of straight arm strength, which is the ability to depress your scapula. And so what we're going to do is some dip shrugs on here. When we're depressing the scapula, we are stimulating the rhomboids and the lower traps, which are muscles that aren't typically too stimulated in most people due to being sedentary, etc., not doing the right exercises. So this is going to be a useful movement for you to develop just from that perspective alone. And so what we want to do for this dip shrug exercise is grab the parallettes like so. Try not to grab it so that your knuckles are kind of pointing up, because you don't want your wrist to be too flexed. Try and just rotate the wrist round slightly. And then what we're going to do is we're going to just bring the feet forward so you've got good support. And then externally rotate the armpits like so. Okay, that's a nice strong position. All right, we don't want to be here at all, because elbows can flex out to the side and that's weak. So what we want to do is make sure that here elbows can't flex, and it's pretty hard to get them to flex back because you're pushing those elbows as far forwards and locking them as much as possible. That's why it's a good straight arm position. Then from here, just start in that shrug first so that you know what the opposite sensation is like, and then focus on pushing the crown of the head towards the ceiling, shoulder blades down the back as tall as you can before you come slowly back down. Now, one error that I see people make with this is they're kind of doing this bouncy thing, all right? You don't want to do that. You just want to move up slowly, get that depression, feel the shoulder blades down the back, hands really tight, then slowly drop the hips down into a shrug before you push up again, like so. And that's simply it for that dip shrug movement. And so for that, again, does not need to be too structured. 5 to 10 reps, just so you know what that movement feels like, what that sensation feels like, and that's going to be a key skill that we're going to integrate into our L-sit. So the next skill is compression. This is essentially being able to bring the upper body and the lower body together, a key gymnastic skill. And so the first thing that we're going to learn for this is the reverse crunch, because that's going to help you to stimulate your hip flexors, but also your lower abdominals and your abdominals in their totality, but in particular, the lower abdominals. You're really going to feel that here. And this is going to be very important for when you're starting to hold your legs up in an L-sit or any variation of an L-sit. But compression is also really important when you start to learn movements such as the handstand, because it's going to really enable you to control your hips. So for the reverse crunch, I want to break this down just because there's potential for this to have a lot of momentum added to this movement, which isn't ideal. So what we're going to do is we're just going to lie on our backs, and then we're going to bring or flex the pelvis or the lumbar spine so that the tailbone is coming up, and you've already established some tension in the abs. Then bring your knees up, and then we want to focus on thighs towards the stomach. Your hips will leave the floor, that's fine, but the range is not going to be too excessive, which means that we're going to be really stimulating the lower abdominals and hip flexors. And so what that looks like is here, and then slowly release to center, pull in, and you'll feel that tightness as you do that, compared to someone just rolling back like so, okay? Sorry if you hear weird sounds, okay? We don't want that. We want to really just push the thighs as much into the stomach as possible before we release, okay? This one, we can make this slightly more structured. So 2 to 3 sets, 5 to 10 reps. This one is all about just learning the movement, learning the skill, and this is going to be really helpful for you in keeping your legs elevated. So the next thing that we want to look at is hamstring flexibility, because obviously in an L-sit you want to keep your legs as locked as possible, and for that we need 2 things actually: quad strength and hamstring flexibility. And so we're kind of going to be working on those simultaneously, and I'm just going to show you the best approach to stretch your hamstrings so that it relates to the skill that we're trying to develop here, which is holding your legs out in front of you in the L-sit. And so what we want to do for hamstring flexibility, I'm just going to try and keep this simple, but we want to focus on the stomach coming into the thighs rather than reaching forwards through the back, because there we're not really stimulating the hamstrings so much because we're not allowing the pelvis to move. And so if we do this, so try and keep your chest up but push the stomach into the thighs, you're going to feel a massive difference. Now the other thing that I want you to do is focus on locking the quads. Okay, so when you lock the quads, you're actually going to be able to lengthen the hamstrings more and generate a little bit more flexibility. So quads are locked. Then I'm going to push the stomach in, and then you just want to, instead of counting, take 4 deep breaths. That's going to be a good way for you to focus on increasing your flexibility. The breathing is going to help relax the body more, and so that's going to help you to feel more comfortable in exploring new ranges. And so quads locked, chest up, stomach into thighs, and then, and you might find with each breath, you can sink just a little bit lower. And then bonus points, you can pull your toes towards you, keeping the quads locked the whole time, and then relax. The final component, what we're going to do now is we're going to combine that compression with the hamstring flexibility in order to ensure that we can actually hold the legs up, and so we're really drilling that compression even more. So what we want to do here is, and we can do single leg, bring one leg in nice and tight. That's going to really stimulate the hip flexors on this side, and try and create tension as you do this. This leg, lock it, okay? So everything's tight in this leg, everything's tight here. Now we want to focus on the aesthetic component of the L-sit, so point the toes, and then from here, lift the heel off the floor and down. And for this, we want to try and hold at the top for 2 seconds or so. So 1, 2, down. 1, 2, down. As we come down, don't relax. Keep that tension. 1, 2, down. And then obviously we can swap sides and do exactly the same on the other leg. And so what I would do is do this for 8 to 10 reps to really drill that. You might feel some cramping in the hip flexors. That's fine for now. It just means that we're working them, and that means that we're strengthening them, which is actually going to help you to feel less tight, as the hip flexors are such a under-trained muscle. So that's going to be a great drill for us to learn. So now that we've done that, let's go through all of the regressions and see how we are implementing all these attributes into your full L sit. So now I'm going to talk through all of the regressions. We fully understand all the key attributes that we need to develop for the L sit. We need to keep on drilling those. As we drill those, there's going to be one main progression that we are going to be working on and building up time holding that position. And we're going to be aiming for 20 seconds or so. So what we're going to do for the first regression is a tuck L sit. And so whenever I do any movement, the setup is really important, even if I'm doing the regression. And so what we're going to do is grab the parallettes, walk your feet forward slightly. I'm going to rotate the elbow pits and shrug. All right, that's that strong straight arm position, and we're really stimulating the muscles along the back that we need to. And then we're going to bring one knee up like so. Make sure that the arms stay externally rotated, and then slowly bring the other knee up like so. And pull the knees up as high as they can go. Once you've built up to 20 seconds, it's time to go on to the next progression. So next one, I actually find this one quite hard compared to the full L sit, believe it or not. But what we're going to do is a tuck with a slight extension. And so let me teach you how to get into that. This one's really going to stimulate your hip flexors quite a bit, so just be warned. So what we're going to do, I'm going through each of the steps just because it's good practice. Nice tight grip on the parallettes, bring my feet into the right position, elbow pits forwards, nice big shrug. Start going into my tuck hold first, then knees forward slightly, pointing the toes down. Keep shrugging and hold. Keep the knees locked, everything in tension. Build that one up to 15 to 20 seconds. Once you can do so comfortably, time for the next progression. What we're doing now is we are starting to flirt with having a leg locked. And so I'm just going to dive straight in. Nice tight grip on the parallettes. Feet into position. Elbow pits, shrug. Knees right in. Kick one leg out and hold. Notice the toe points. It's hard to talk whilst I'm doing this. Leg is locked, toe is high. Just quickly, whilst take a quick break, this leg should be nice and high, because when you're doing your L sit, I mean, we're not going into a V sit yet, which is where your body is in a V shape, but we're progressing towards that. If you find that when you do that, your leg's kind of horizontal, lower, that's not where we want it, because the key is also to make this look as aesthetic as possible. And so we want to be at least parallel to the floor, but it's going to be good practice for you to drill the foot being slightly higher, because that's the position where we want to be strong. So we're there at the L sit. So you're going to see how this is going to be really stimulating your core, your quads, hamstring flexibility, straight arm strength, the full shebang. And so this is exactly how I get into the L sit every single time to ensure that it's a good, sturdy, strong L sit. Nice tight grip on the parallettes, walking my feet forward slightly, elbow pits, shrug, and then from here, I'm just going to bring the knees up and lock out a little bit higher, point the toes, shrug hard, little shake, lock the legs even more, bring them in, and that's how I get out of the L sit as well. So for that, you kind of need to gauge where you're potentially going to fail before you come back. A good level to build up to with that, if I'm training these aren't really in my program at the moment, but if you can build up to doing 30 seconds of those, that's a good solid base for you to progress from. The straight arm strength generated there is going to be really useful for when you start to move into things like the planche and even your handstands. And so that's essentially it. There you have it, guys. That was the L sit. See the description below to see all of the protocols that you can use for each of those drills described. If you got any questions, do hit me up. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video.